Welcome everybody to the CDP Awards Europe 2026 with Euronews. I'm Jeremy Wilkes, science correspondent.
And I'm Estelle Nilsson-Julian, disinformation reporter and journalist.
And this afternoon, we will meet with leaders in business, in finance, in government to look at a key question. How can sustainability be a catalyst for resilience, competitiveness, and growth?
And we're also marking a very important milestone because CDP is celebrating its 25th anniversary. That's a quarter century of commitment to environmental transparency. All of you here today have played a part in this journey, turning disclosure from a niche practice into a global norm.
And I'm actually celebrating my own 25th anniversary as well, 25 years working at Euronews, Europe's biggest news channel.
And from Gen Z like me to Gen X like you, Jeremy, it's fair to say that the pace at which the world is changing can make your head spin. And that's why I spend my days reporting on disinformation to sort through what's true and fake and make some sense of it all.
Yes, Estelle is a professional fact checker, and you can see all of her videos in the Cube on Euronews. They're brilliant. So Estelle, talk us through what's coming up.
So we'll be reflecting on the progress made by CDP in the past 25 years. We'll also be turning to the future to look at how the next era of growth is set to pan out by shining a light on the inherent value of climate and nature. We will crucially discuss how organizations embracing climate and nature are redefining profitability.
And with all of the geopolitical and regulatory uncertainty, we'll also be debating how we fill those critical intelligence gaps in the market and across the value chain.
But it's not all serious. There will be time, of course, for us to mingle later. And of course, we'll be celebrating the achievements of many of you with us in the audience today, the CDP A-list companies and cities, that's leaders driving progress and committing to the work still ahead. For the full rundown of the program, all you have to do is scan the QR code on your badge.
Yep, I scanned it earlier. Works fantastically well. Love those QR codes. So have a quick look at that. We've got an amazing array of guests coming up, starting with our opening keynote speaker, somebody all of you will be familiar with, I think, the CEO of CDP, Sherry Madeira. Before Sherry's speech, we have a special video, which is going to be up on the screen behind us, to set the scene, reflecting on the past 25 years of environmental transparency and the opportunities that lie ahead. So let's watch the video, and then it's over to Sherry.
25 years ago, from a small basement in London, CDP began with a radical belief. Transparency could change how the world makes decisions. We dared to imagine what environmental disclosure could be, and helped bring it into the heart of global markets. Our aim was to make climate reporting as fundamental to business growth and success as financial reporting. And as response rates grew, so did our reach, building a globally trusted environmental disclosure system, a vital partner to businesses, investors, and governments. Today, the world is more volatile than ever, and the choices ahead carry greater consequence. So the next chapter asks more of us, not just to measure impact, but to go further. Disclosure is no longer only about reporting. It helps set direction, so we can decide the legacy we leave. An Earth-positive future is within reach, if we continue to make the decisions that move us to a world where people, planet, and profit are truly balanced. Because the future is not something we inherit, it's something we create.
Good afternoon. Bonjour. Hello. We're here to celebrate today. So thank you all for being together at this moment. But it's also a moment of some reflection, some inflection, some pause. Because uncertainty, as we heard in the last video, is upon us. Of course, you might say it's ever been thus. But I think here, as we stand in March 2026, we can agree that geopolitical tensions are reminding us how interconnected we are as economies, energy systems, and as value chains. In Europe, we're feeling those shocks directly. We're seeing that energy prices, cost of production, supply chain access, all of these are facing uncertainties. And those uncertainties are from outside of Europe and from inside. So we're not going to be faulted today if we focus on the risks, if we start to think about what we should be pausing to consider because of the downside. But I'd also like for us to also use today as a quiet moment to think about opportunity, to think about resilience, and to think about the change in your energy mix that might favor renewables, that you're starting to think differently about because of what's going on in the rest of the world. How is it that you can make sure you're creating resilience in your costs and making sure that you're protecting your profitability when you're thinking about what's going on in the world? And how is it that you're going to create opportunity to consider different and better business models so that you can protect those profits with a sustainable business going forward? Resilience, price, profits. This is business language. This is economic language. And perhaps that is something that when we talk about uncertainty in the world we're living in right now, we can embrace because it's a common language that we can all use. And over the past 25 years, CDP, we've seen something fundamentally change. And that is that the environmental information and data is actually then becoming common language as well. It's moved from something that's on the sidelines into something that is central in business and in decision making. So working together, CDP has been able to help companies, together with all of you, investors, together with all of you, and governments, access the data that they need to manage risk, to build resilience, and to drive impact. So even in times of turbulence, on days maybe some of us don't feel like we should be celebrating, we should be celebrating. We should be applauding the efforts that are being made inside this room and across the world in order to create comparable data that means that we can take good business decisions. The current volatility we're facing highlights why we have great leadership and robust decision-useful data and why it's so critical. Of course, when I say we're here to celebrate, we're here to celebrate you. We're here to celebrate our A-list companies. And that is the real progress from one year to the next. And that's what this afternoon allows us to do, which is that our disclosures, our partners, the organizations who choose transparency, even when it's challenging, we need a moment to say thank you and to acknowledge that effort. Everyone here today has demonstrated what it means for environmental performance to become a management discipline. You've embedded disclosure into your strategy, into your governance, and into your capital allocation. And in so doing, you've made a benchmark for what is credible environmental leadership. It acts as a North Star, not only in this room, but throughout your value chain, throughout your ecosystem, through those that you come into contact with businesses worldwide. It's not a piece of data that sits in a database. It is information and insight that drives good decisions going forward. A great example of this is L'Oréal. It's a company that I'm sure you can imagine has a large supplier base. In 2024, 77% of L'Oréal's disclosing suppliers reported emissions reductions initiatives, leading to an estimated $7.4 billion in cost savings. This is real progress, and it's driven by customers using their economic relationships to engage supply chains to make Earth-positive decisions. This is not data sitting on a shelf. To our investor signatories and supply chain members, you've been essential to CDP's disclosure for the past quarter of a century. We also recognize the wider ecosystem that drives disclosure forward. Accredited solution providers, many of you are in this room, thank you. Policymakers and partners, again, thank you. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for using data to contribute to the answers. And today, we celebrate our collective achievement. And we also consider what the future that we can unlock together could be. So from disclosure to direction, future legacy is what we are thinking about. We're turning data into leadership, and that's how we protect prosperity for generations to come. The decisions that leaders make today, the decisions that we all make today, the decisions that our C-suite makes today, that our customers make today, and that we are influencing, are powered by data grounded in evidence. And it'll define the markets, industries, and economies of the futures. At CDP, we're proud to be celebrating our 25th anniversary, including 17 years with an office in continental Europe. And what we've achieved together with our partners and customers in making disclosure the norm and driving systematic change is exciting. Over 22,100 companies disclose environmental data in 2025, with A-list scores in climate, water, and forest showing steady growth over the past couple of years. Over 2/3 of Europe's market capitalization disclosed through CDP in 2025. And 305 European companies received an A score. We're here to celebrate them tonight. Last year also marked the start of a journey for 4,400 companies. They disclosed through CDP for the first time, and they are on a path that many of you know very well. So we mark this anniversary and we ask, what legacy are we building through the decisions we make now? How will we all, together as partners, live and create a world where Earth-positive economics becomes standard practice? So what do I mean by Earth-positive economics? You know, is this another phrase out there? Is it another word we need to think about the definition? Well, as most of you know, CDP started in climate, right? Starts with the C. We started in carbon 25 years ago. And now we are so much more. Now we work across water, across forests. And our next speaker will definitely share his point of view on nature and thinking about how it is that those data points mean more today than they did yesterday and will mean even more tomorrow. So what do we mean by Earth positive? CDP doesn't believe in talking about climate and nature. It's all one. It's all about being Earth positive, and all the data that we surface is Earth positive data. So how do we use that? And how do we make it into Earth positive economics? It's a concept that's rooted in a simple but powerful belief that environmental health is a precondition for prosperity, not a drag to it. And that better data leads to better economic outcomes. Earth-positive economics embeds environmental data into economic decision-making. It reduces risks, and it drives performance. The concept places sustainability at the heart of value creation, and far from being at the expense of growth, it acts as a catalyst for it. CDP's latest corporate health check found that Europe remains a global leader in sustainability performance. That's no surprise to anyone in this room. With 16% of European corporates having emerged as true environmental leaders, according to that research that was launched at Davos in January of this year. In the past 12 months alone, these companies identified and unlocked $76 billion in environmental opportunities. So we're not talking about risks there. We're talking about the opportunities that this data is unlocking right here in Europe. More than a third of those more than a third of the opportunities were realized here, rather than outside the borders of Europe. And that was all done while cutting emissions around 60% faster than your peers internationally. Again, something to celebrate. This is what Earth-positive economics looks like in practice, using globally comparable environmental data to inform strategy. It's about leading organizations that are building a more transparent, more resilient, and more competitive global economy. Investors and banks already use CDP data to scores to inform their processes. I've spoken to a number of you already today about how it is, as investors, you are thinking about how to use CDP data and scores to create universes of investment. What that means is that you're using this data in order to be able to include and exclude companies from your investment universe. That directly affects access to capital. That becomes important not only to the sustainability professionals, but also to the CFO, to the compliance officer, to the board. It's important. Some of the world's largest buyers also gain visibility of their supply chains through the data that we surface. And you'll hear firsthand during today's discussions from many of those who are using the data in order to make great buying decisions. But 25 years on, evolution is necessary for us, for CDP, for the ecosystem, in order to meet today's demands. Considering nature is an important theme. It's more important than actually thinking about what we did last year. We need to think about what more we can do next year. And CDP's nature-based questions have been growing, not only in the number of data points that we surface, but also in the amount of demand that those data points are pushing for. Let me give you an example. Water. Water was the theme at Davos this year. Water, you might think, is actually only involved in a few of the industries that we all work in. However, if we talk about AI and the use of water in terms of cooling, if we think about sort of how water influences the entire food and beverage and agricultural chain, if we consider how manufacturing processes and robotics rely on fresh water, and then we consider that in 2030, water scarcity is imminent. In 2030, 40% more demand than supply of fresh water. That's only a few years away from now. So if we think about how it is that Earth-positive economics can play a role here, scarcity drives prices, drives inflation. What does that happen when we're looking at water scarcity? These are the sort of conversations that we need to have to make sure that finance and economics are keeping pace. So what comes next? What does come next? There we go. As we look ahead, the idea of the legacy that we leave behind, that we're incredibly proud of at CDP and so many of you have been participating in, it becomes important to not just think of that. It's essential that we actually look ahead and we think about what becomes our future legacy. Each of us in this room has influence over capital, over supply chains, over innovation, and over policy conversations. The legacy we build will depend on how consistently we align economic decision-making with planetary boundaries. We couldn't have reached this milestone without the unwavering support of our regional supporters and our partners, including L'Oréal, who are sponsoring today's event and is celebrating not one, not two, but 10 years as a CDP AAA lister. As we look to the future, we must continue to lead with purpose, with innovation, and an unwavering commitment to building a better world. I think we all agree with that. We can no longer separate out the discussion around how to achieve our climate and nature targets. We need to be Earth positive. And we encourage you to continue to strengthen your strategy through disclosure. Think about how we inform the best business strategies of the future using a data approach. And today's decisions are shaping not just tomorrow and the next day, but it's shaping the next 25, 50, 100 years ahead. That's what we mean by future legacy. And by acting decisively now, we can define that as being a thriving future built on measurable progress. So I want to welcome you all with a heartfelt gratitude to joining us here at CDP's 2026 Awards for Europe. It's our 25th anniversary, and we're delighted to share that with you. And I'm looking forward to congratulating so many of you for the hard work that you've put in, not only in the last 12 months, but in many years before, and also securing the fact that we will partner for many more years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherry. That was very inspiring, but also very grounded. Love the way you dig into some of the detail as well. For you, what's been one of the highlights in the last few years at the head of CDP?
Well, I've only been able to have the honor and pleasure of being the CEO of CDP for a little over 2 years, 2.5 years. So when we talk about 25 years, really, I've come into the gym at the 99-100 moment, and I'm very aware of that. What has been a real pleasure is getting to know so many of you in this audience and being able to actually take the passion, the conviction, the understanding of this ecosystem from all of you and from all of my incredible CDP colleagues in order to think about how is it that we do things differently, how do we do it more, and how do we bring along a wider community. We can't be speaking in an echo chamber. We're not. And we need all of your help to continue to think about how data is actually part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Absolutely, yeah. It's all about the facts, isn't it? Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Sherry. Please go and take your seat over there. If you'd like to rejoin the crowd. We will hear from you later on.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Now let's home in on a decisive factor for organizations as they plan for the future. That all-important factor is nature.
Indeed, we're talking about the systems that underpin food production, water supply, as Sherry was just talking about, and the stability of entire ecosystems that businesses depend on.
And our next speaker, David Craig, co-chairs the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. This organization, which is also known as TNFD, works to redirect global financial flows towards nature-positive outcomes.
Please give a warm welcome to David Craig.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sherry, and the CDP team for inviting me here today. It's quite hard to follow, Sherry. Those are very inspiring words that she said there about being Earth positive. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means in the context of nature. It's a great honor to meet all of you. My daughter, when I left London this morning, said, "Where are you going in Paris?" I said, "I'm meeting a bunch of A-listers." She fully expects me to appear with Brad Pitt and George Clooney, and so if you are in the audience, then can we meet at the back? I need to get her a photograph. But it's wonderful to meet you, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. And it's quite an event, 25 years to celebrate, which I think is a remarkable achievement by CDP, but as Sherry said, a remarkable achievement by all of you and the supporters of CDP to get this far. As Sherry said, over 20,000 companies are now disclosing climate information. But the problem is only a fraction of those companies can really tell you how they're dependent on nature. Only a fraction can so far. Yet we know from economists, ecologists, even the central banks are saying that nature underpins all parts of our economy, all parts of our industry, and all parts of our business and our investments. Just last month, IPBES released their latest assessment, which reaffirmed, frankly, what we already know, and we've been told so many times, that the destruction of nature and the decline of biodiversity is creating critical systemic risks that threaten our economic stability and, as Sherry said, the well-being of us and our planet. But the news isn't all bleak. I think what's really interesting in the last few years is they've affirmed that many of the tools, the frameworks, and the data that we need to act are available. The natural world and the ecosystems that we rely upon, those ecosystem services that are so dependent, are said to be the most valuable, but the most undervalued asset classes that we have. But the other hugely valuable resource that we all have is time. Our own time and how we use it, how we use time to prepare, to adapt our business models, to adapt our financial systems, and time to understand our interface with nature. The organizations that are receiving awards tonight understand clearly the value of time, and they've been driving their time and action for the last 25 years to do that. And if we wind back 25 years ago, these have been really significant in terms of the impact that we have had on the planet. If we think about what's happened in the last 25 years ago when CDP was formed, there were no smartphones, there was no social media platform, there was no Instagram or TikTok, We hadn't invented Bitcoin, we hadn't actually invented the term ESG, and there was certainly no Paris Agreement. So on one side, we've come a huge way in terms of the development of humanity and what we can do. But on the other hand, we emit 60% more greenhouse gases than we did 25 years ago. We have doubled the amount of plastic that we produce than 25 years ago. And we've increased the amount of nitrogen, phosphate, and potash fertilizers that we use every single year in the last 25 years, bar one. Every single year we've increased the use of that. So that sounds quite bleak and concerning. It should be, because we're on a trajectory that is not sustainable. But to remain positive, think about the innovations since the year 2000. Clean power now surpasses 40% of all global energy generation in terms of solar and wind, and it's generally cheaper than fossil fuels around the world. Regenerative farming practices have started to develop the agri-food sector, proving that we can actually reduce the harm to nature, we can increase the productivity, and we can actually increase yields using less harmful practices. Water reuse and recycling can cut industrial use of water by 90% and agriculture by half. Satellite and monitoring technology is now at a point where we can measure, model, and monitor pretty much every piece of land at the surface, and to some extent below the surface, in the planet. And global conserved land has reached now 17%. We could argue protection isn't good enough, but conservation is at least on the way to the 30 by 30 goals that we've talked about. And of course, we're living today in a crisis caused by the war in Iran. Fertilizer costs have doubled, oil costs and petrol are going through the roof, yet we are still totally dependent on these expensive, fragile inputs to our economy. That's bad for our economy, it's bad for resilience, it's bad for our business. So our question today that we should ask ourselves is, how do we in finance and economics and business accelerate these changes on a global scale so that we can continue to grow, we can continue to become more resilient, but we create that earth positive that Sherry talked about? And I think, and I've always thought, the answer is in the financial system, and the answer is in the boardrooms and the executive teams that we govern. And this is where I think everyone in this room comes in. These awards, I was reflecting on a really quite a milestone. 25 years of CDP, over 22,000 companies reporting, working hard to understand their interactions in the environment, increasing that transparency and that data that we talked about. CDP has been clearly a critical platform supporting the uptake and disclosures of various standards such as the TCFD, now part of IFRS, and most recently TNFD and other regulations. Disclosure through the CDP platform means that data being collected once, it can be collected efficiently, it increases visibility, it increases usability, particularly for investors. We're delighted that we're working with the CDP and committed to incorporate the TNFD recommendations into the questionnaires to further improve the alignment and ensure that we cover all of the realms of nature: the oceans, the atmosphere, the earth, and fresh water. This is work in progress, and I know many people are eager to understand how we're doing and make progress on this platform. And the good news, I checked, but of the CDP's A-listers, 15% are already TNFD adopters, many in Europe. Undoubtedly, more are actually producing TNFD reports, and this is a really promising start. But my own push would be, if we're going to award an A to our kids for their exams, they need to study the full syllabus. We can't cherry pick and be selective. We've got to look at the full Earth Positive to get full marks. So I'm looking forward to the time when the A-list actually looks at all realms of nature and our ability to capture that. The good news is it's growing. TNFD adoption is growing, nature assessment is growing. Just after 2.5 years after the release of the TNFD recommendations, our adoption is now growing at 50% per year. It represents 9 trillion of market capitalization, about 22 trillion of assets under management. And many, many major asset managers, such as BlackRock, AXA, HSBC, Allianz, BNPP have issued stewardship guidelines saying they expect nature to be assessed, and they often expect people to use TNFD. So they're going to look forward to a further alignment between TNFD and CDP. Many companies are using the LEAP assessment approach because nature is location sensitive, and they're using other guidance to understand where the risks and opportunities lie in their value chains and their portfolios. And they're also unlocking opportunities for growth and innovation. In a recent sample of TNFD adopters, over 40% said that as a result of the assessment, they are making changes to their operations, their sourcing, their materials, or their processes. Disclosure is really important. It creates transparency, accountability, comparability, but decisions and actions are actually what matters. Recent work also highlights how investable opportunities are growing and how capital is now starting to flow, particularly towards businesses that contribute towards nature-positive outcomes. Finance is obviously a key catalyst on this, and for those of you who saw the WEF report just 2 weeks ago, they identified over 50 areas of nature-positive investments, and they estimate the market could be worth 10 trillion over time. We're recognizing that investing in nature isn't just about investing in restoration or preservation. It's investing in those new technologies, the new processes and materials that allow us to grow our industries but have less harm on Mother Earth. And I hope to see that more funds and investments go into this area of nature as well as the other areas as well. On the regulatory front, the ISSB announced at COP that they are incorporating and building on the TNFD to build them into their recommendations as well. So hopefully we will see soon a regulatory platform in which nature is fully incorporated into those standards. This room is full of people, I think, that are showing leadership in this space. It's like the weather outside. It's stormy at the moment. You don't know whether it's going to rain or whether the sun is shining. It's quite difficult to get through sometimes. But I think what we need to do is not focus on the excuses that are too easy to make, but focus on the values and focusing on the value. By understanding, assessing, reporting, and managing nature issues, we can contribute to an enabling environment, we can show leadership, and we can demonstrate to our peers what is possible and what is feasible. I'll close by talking about time. I mentioned that time is our most precious resource. We sometimes don't put a value on nature. We definitely don't put a value on our time. We don't have another 25 years. We can't afford to let this be a waiting game. We can't afford to wait for our peers or others to act. We can't afford to wait for regulation to come. And we certainly can't afford to wait for perfect data. My ask of all of us and our message is the guidance, the tools, the practices are now emerging. Acting now will unlock opportunities for this Earth-positive future. It will unlock innovation. It will unlock growth for our business and the planet. I really hope the A-list of the future drinks the glasses of champagne that you will tonight, celebrating this Earth-positive, a holistic approach to nature and climate that are not separate, but are actually put together to one. If we can do that, if we can celebrate that achievement, we'll have a more prosperous economy, we'll have more prosperous business, and we'll have an Earth-positive future as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for that insightful presentation. For the business leaders in the room, what's one decision you'd want a board or executive team to consider in the next year which integrates nature into their strategy?
Start.
Can you tell me a little bit more?
What I've learned about boards and senior execs is they are scared of complexity and the unknown. And they perceive this as complicated, difficult. They might need a PhD in ecology or environmental to do it. And they tend to then drift in something that might be more familiar, like let's just do water. Start but be holistic. Have a look at the 4 realms of nature and understand where they are. And what we found time and time again with all the great businesses that do this, and many are in the room, is actually it's more intuitive and easier than they thought, and they learn a huge amount of value along the way.
Thank you, David, for that concise advice. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Right, now it's time to get into a subject that I'm sure fires up absolutely everybody in this room. For years, there was this kind of assumption, I suppose, that sustainability was a cost or a kind of constraint. Perhaps sustainability sometimes felt like a box that you had to tick, a kind of thing that you did for the regulators, and not very much more than that. And now we can say with certainty that that assumption is wrong. Environmental health is in fact a precondition for prosperity.
Yes, and we know that companies that lead on environmental performance highlight how Earth-positive economics are reshaping the blueprint for growth. And that's been backed up by the 2026 CDP Corporate Health Check Europe, which just came out, and it found that 16% of European companies are defying the headwinds and surging ahead as environmental leaders, cutting their emissions by an average of almost 5% year on year, while also capturing $77 billion in economic gains.
And if you'd like to find out more about that, you can just scan that QR code that's on your badge, and it will just magically appear, which is marvelous. And you can have a little read of that report later on, because we've got other things to talk about. We're gonna ask, how can organizations act on environmental data to not only mitigate risk, but also to drive competitiveness, drive profit, and create new opportunities?
Well, let's find out in this first panel moderated by Jeremy. We'd like to invite on stage our panelists, Essa Kaikkonen, Chief Executive of Metsä Board Corporation, one of Europe's leading sustainable packaging businesses. Fabrizio Lappacarella, Deputy Secretary General of the OECD, bringing the policy dimension to this conversation. Ignacy Nieto Magaldi, General Manager of Miquel y Costas, the first Spanish company to appear on CDP's AAA list. And Natalie Olkjær, Chief Sustainability Officer at Danone, a company that has put environmental strategy at the very center of its business model. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Estelle. I can take a seat now. Right, so now it's time to have a discussion about this tricky business that we're talking about of turning environmental progress into profit. We know that it's fascinating, we know that it works, but we also have to talk about the situation, because I don't think I'm alone in waking up in the morning and checking the news, what's Trump done today, what's happened with climate change today, what's happened with AI today. This pace of change is extraordinary, and into that we need to carry on having these important conversations about sustainability and driving towards that progress on emissions, on adaptation, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get straight to it, actually, the difficult business of this Middle East crisis. And for you at Metsä Board Corporation up in Finland, are you affected by what's happening at the moment with the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, et cetera, et cetera? Those sorts of things already starting to hit your supply chain. Let's just kind of quickly run through that and just tell me your thoughts already.
Jeremy, thank you very much. I think it would be a kind of a seminar for a day at least to go through this, but I will be brief in that sense that, of course, it's impacting, and I would take it from three angles very, very shortly. First, short term, I see clearly that there is a negative impact, of course, on the cost side. And it's also affecting to the consumer confidence, for sure.
You're seeing the cost already now?
Yes, it does. And then the second thing, I think that you should see it in long term. It should be a catalyst, at least in European leaders, to say that, hey, now we have to accelerate actually going to the renewables. And the third angle is what it means for us. I think it means for us who has been investing in the last 10 years, over 7 billion euros to actually, big part of that has been allocated to renewables. So that actually gives us, let's say, an opportunity to actually leverage this.
You're getting from renewables.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Finland, often a leader on those sorts of things. But actually, I'm going to jump past the OECD because I know you want to remain politically neutral on these sorts of things, but not necessarily the case for everybody else. They can allow to say what they think a little bit more, perhaps. Ignacy, how are things happening? How is the Middle East crisis impacting your business? Are you seeing any impacts yet, and what things do you see in the future?
Yeah, we are seeing a big impact because actually we are going to we buy a big part of our energy in the spot market. So that's a strategy that we've been doing for the last 10 years, and so the rise of the price of gas in Europe has been huge.
But all I hear is good news about Spain and how they've got a great policy on renewables and they're kind of shielded themselves.
Spain did very well in the power sector. Actually, I was checking the price today is €5 per megawatt hour, and we have almost 90% of CO2 free energy. Today the wind is 40%, the solar is around 20%, so we have 15% more of nuclear. So the policy has been great for the power sector. So, for example, all the electricity we use is CO2 free because we buy also guarantees of origin. But the problem is the gas. So the industry in Europe it needs thermal energy, and we use a lot of gas to produce steam, like you. So the solution for that, the only technology is profitable now to substitute the natural gas is the biomass right now, because hydrogen is still far away. So any increase in price, as it happened when Russia invaded Ukraine, it has a big impact. So the gas today is around €55 per megawatt hour, and the price 1 month ago was 25. So it's almost more than double.
It's hitting you really hard. And what's happening at Danone?
Well, yes, we are also affected, of course. It's mostly due to energy, yes, as my colleagues. And for sure, we were hopefully doing a lot of effort in our scope 1 primary. So yes, now we have the benefit of doing so much of the shift in the electricity, in the electric power. But nevertheless, we have so much use of fuel in the entire supply chain. I think about we are selling across the world a lot of cold chain products. And of course here, of course we rely mostly on the fuel. And something which was not touched here, it's about packaging. Because we have a variety of packaging, but some of them, of course, are based on plastic. So we might also have even more impact in the months to come on that, even if we were edging wisely. So again, we were also diminishing our plastic footprint, hopefully. So this is another benefit, but not to the point not to be affected, of course. So indeed,
You've got bad weather on the horizon then, basically. Clouds on the horizon, just as they have in the Middle East at the moment, interestingly. Fabrizia, from the OECD's point of view, how do you see the situation at the moment? I mean, your core objectives is to raise working standards for people, living standards for people, employment standards. Those are the kind of goals of the OECD. How do you see the Middle East crisis?
Well, a difficult question, Jeremy, but this I can try to answer. The Middle East crisis, we are actually monitoring very closely the Middle East crisis, and we're monitoring the impact that soaring energy prices may have on, the prospects of inflation. We are monitoring the impact the war and can have the Strait of Hormuz is a key node for the transport of petrol, of oil, but is also, a critical node for other types of other type of transports. I mean, that will have an effect on the routes of the shipping, and that will have an effect. It will be another push on inflation. Now, we're monitoring it day by day, and there's not much, that can be done at the moment. One thing, possibly, this crisis is part of this is an extreme expression of something that we've been witnessing, for very now a few months. I mean, it's part of the geopolitical tensions. It's part of a landscape characterized by fragmentation of international trade, by extreme uncertainty.
Yeah.
And that is a scenario with which that we have analyzed, with which we are confronting ourselves, and with respect to which we're trying to provide the best policy advice. Simply from our point of view, from the point of view of a technical international organization as the OECD, by reaffirming how essential it is in this context to uphold international cooperation, to uphold the dialogue, and to recognize how important international standards, how important is the role that international standards can play as a compass to navigate the current uncertainty.
Yeah, the compass seems to have been we're having a bit of trouble with the compass at the moment, I think. Are you concerned? I mean, we've got high CDP rating companies here. Are you concerned that a year down the line or a few months down the line, these impacts could actually harm your ability to achieve a high rating from CDP?
Based on the analysis that we have done, I think that and all the allocation and strategies that we have is based that we are actually continuing exactly in the same journey that we have been earlier been. So I think that it is also for us actually has been good business, and I believe that enforcing electrification forward actually accelerates our kind of agenda going forward. So I see that as an opportunity, as I said, for us. But that's generally speaking, I think it will be let's say burdensome.
It's going to be a challenge.
It will be a challenge overall in European industries. We have to admit that a big part of the
I mean, you're kind of shielded in Finland. You've got nuclear, you've got your renewables, you've kind of built a wall around yourselves, which isn't necessarily the case. I mean, France has done its own efforts as well, but each country has got its different specific issues. But Natalie, can I have your thoughts on that, about whether this crisis that we're in at the moment, and which doesn't look like it's going to go away, is going to harm your ability to achieve the high CDP rating?
Well, exactly at the same moment, we were issuing our Danone Impact Journey Phase 2, so the pathway for the next 5 years. And we were, thinking about it during months, having our risk analysis based on the climate risk, the water risks, and so on. So that was, I would say, a very professional job done. It's strategic. It's, I would say, it's approved at the highest level of COMEX, of board. So it's here to stay. I mean, and the conditions that were leading to this Phase 2, they are not changing. And what is happening is more...
But your ability to deliver what you've said, you've committed to?
Well, one way or the other, we will be as entrepreneurs as usual, to find a way. Maybe sometimes we might have to shift a bit or to change our minds on something. But honestly, what we see is that... again, the risks are more materializing than disappearing.
Yep, absolutely.
So yes, so it requires maybe even more creativity in some places, maybe some shifts in sourcing, and so yes, a lot of job to be done still. But do we think that we need to do absolutely our best to achieve it? Yes, we do.
Absolutely. Ignacio, can I just quickly bring you in on that?
Our policy towards that is going to be the same. So what happens in Iran will affect us in the price of the gas. Will affect us because we have some customers there in the area, in the Persian Gulf. But that will be an economic downside. We will not have the same results as last year, economically speaking. But in terms of the CDP, it's going to be the same. So our policy is the same. Actually, it's going to be better because we were in the final stage of opening a new biomass plant for next August. So we are studying now to speed it up the process.
It's kind of driven your resolve to basically pursue
Exactly.
those sustainability goals. Can I also, I mean, it's fun as a journalist talking about the negative things. Can you give me an example of something where you have attempted to make an effort to reduce emissions, and you've attempted to go down a sustainability path, and it's actually, maybe Ignacio, you can come with an answer on this one, it's actually proven to be very expensive, it's proven to be far more difficult than you expected. Are there any examples there that you can give us from your path towards sustainability, where in fact it didn't really work out how you expected? It ended up becoming a cost rather than something that saved you. It ended up increasing your emissions when you wanted it to reduce your emissions.
Well, to give a short answer, so in the CO2, no. Actually, the CO2 has a price in Europe. So all the investments we've made, so we invest 40 million euros every year. We are a medium company. And out of that, half of that is to sustainability projects. And in energy and CO2, all of them are profitable. In water, yes. In water, water so far, economically speaking, is not profitable. So we are doing a lot of efforts, but it's a matter of commitment. And
you're in Catalonia, which has had a crazy story with water in the last 5 years
exactly.
or so, from the drought to then extreme abundance.
Yeah.
And you're working an awful lot on recycling. There's a lot of great efforts there,
Yeah.
for sure. Do you think that has been particularly problematic for you, or do you think it's a general thing, the water issue?
It was. Last year we have a drought, severe drought, and it was. We could continue producing because we have made a lot of efforts for the last 10 years. And we keep on doing these efforts. It's a matter of to be or not to be in 20 years. But what I was saying is that water is much cheaper than energy, and when you do investments, economically they are not speaking. We are doing it anyway because we want to reduce the water footprint, but it's not the same as energy. Energy, all of the investments there are a lot of investments that we can make, and all of them are profitable.
Is it a similar story at Metsabud?
Exactly the same. I'm in the same page in that sense that all the investments that we have made in the past, I was referring to 10 years. If I get the let's say last 5 years, more than 1 billion euros of investments, and half of that is all energy related, and all of those investments have been profitable because of the fact that we have a price tag on that on the emissions. And currently we are 93% fossil-free energy, and we have been reducing the CO2s by 78% since 2018. So in that sense, that has been a really successful journey. And I don't see that that would be changing anytime soon in that sense, unless we will be then somehow together evaporating the ETS. That I certainly don't hope so.
And Natalie, can I get your thoughts on this?
Yes, so maybe to add to what was said, maybe an area which was a bit more challenging is logistic, where shifting to electric transportation was not proven to be a good ROI every time. And I wonder whether in this new context we might reassess maybe some of the cases. Why not?
What specifically in logistics?
Yes, well, everything which relies on fuel instead of electric power. So the shift here requires capital, and yes, the case was not so easy, only very few could really be assessed positively. But it all depends on the cost of fuel, by the way. So,
for sure.
So maybe with the reassessment in this context.
Let's talk about AI as well, because again, it's something that everybody is talking about. They're using it in different ways, different kinds of AI. And some of it promises great efficiency. Some of people complain about the energy use from it. What's your feeling? How does it help you move into a sustainability story? What tools are you using, and how are they helping you to go in that direction?
Wow. So I think it's, well, of course, it's an enabler in many different functions. But in terms of sustainability, is the case proven overall that it will land in a positive, I would say, net impact? For me, I'm not sure.
That was kind of before my idea. Is it net positive or net
negative?
negative?
If I'm thinking of water, for instance, we are very pioneering in water stewardship.
We are proud to be a partner, for instance, of the Ramsar Convention, which is wetland protection for 27 years. So we are really looking deep in the water protection overall, not only consumption in facilities, but also watershed protection. And in this area, seriously, the consumption today of AI and data centers, mostly, this is quite challenging. Right. Yes, they are doing a lot of progress, but I think it's fair that we put pressure on that and not, I would say, escape. It will pay back so much.
When you put pressure on, do they want to hear that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. We see them also in sustainability forums, where we are part of the, for instance, Water Resilience Coalition, and we share some places where, and yes, I think they understand that, and they are working hard, I guess, on what I understand, on the consumption. Yes.
And how's it working in the paper business? I suppose AI. What's it bringing to you? What kind of efficiencies is it helping sustainability? Who wants to have a go on that?
I would say that, of course, we have high expectations. AI, we've seen in the past 2 decades that there has been a high hopes on the ICT and digitalization, that what it brings and productivity. It hasn't bring that much that we have been expecting, but the AI is actually, in my sense, working as a catalyst as well for the further productivity. And it's all about the data. And I think that the environmental data is a good example while we have been collecting that together and as a part of the CDP as well. So we have a very firm basis and solid basis of data there.
But you're using AI to go through the data to find new
exactly.
insights.
And also leveraging our value proposition and delivering the proof points, etc., going forward. I think it will be enormously helping our customer work and also putting then I don't go to that. It's more of an, let's say, how we run the business. We have been more of a monitoring our mills earlier. I think that we can be much more predictive in going forward in order to kind of interfere before the hiccups occur. So that also helps us to put our industrial processes in better place with the AI.
Net positive, net negative, then how do you see it?
Net positive, absolutely.
Net positive in terms of emissions as well, all of it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
If we can be more predictive in our industrial processes, that will help us also to put the CO2 emissions and all the emissions actually down.
But these are little gains, these are little
They are little gains, of course. I don't believe that there will be a world-changing, dramatic changes on use of AI that would be turning this business upside down.
Right.
This is real terms, let's say, physical movement of goods and energy.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it doesn't kind of turn upside down very fast.
Certain processes a robot can't do any better. Not very good at growing trees, perhaps. Yes.
I see AI, I think it's going to be very important, for example, in sustainability, for example, the guys that make the climate models or even in the technology side. But at the micro level of the company, I agree with both my peers. I'm not seeing it so far, neither in the operations of the factories, because actually the technology is not ready for that yet in the industry, I think. And for the sustainability at our micro level, I don't see it. I see it in other fields.
Ritzia, I see you reacting.
Huh?
Tell me what's in your mind.
No, I mean, it's extremely, well, I have, of course, another perspective, and we have been actually focusing on AI from a different point of view since the beginning. I'm saying the obvious when I say that we have been looking at trying to identify as better as possible risks and opportunities all together. This is very close to what, as I was saying a second ago, from the perspective of a company. And while I mean, I should say that looked at from the point of view of the organization, I mean, the risks the risks are much wider, and I would say, as important as the risks for the environment in terms of the energy that is required for data center things like that. But we face risk for actually for the integrity also of our democratic systems. Where the misuse of the AI could, be a threat of that. But we have enormous benefits, and it is. We need to think of policies that can facilitate the take-up of AI to make sure that the impact on productivity that the AI can deliver, can be unleashed. We need to and at the same time we need to address the issues that arise on the labor market, in the field of information, disinformation, misinformation, things like that.
But I'm picking up that you're not particularly positive then, overall.
No, I am. I am absolutely aware of the complexity. I am positive. I wouldn't be so brave to say, straight away, net positive, the thing. But certainly, because
it's inevitable, right? It's inevitable.
It's inevitable and must be. It must be leveraged. For
in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Thinking about things that are also inevitable, unfortunately, climate change, same thing. However much we might wish it the case, we're not going to be able to wish it away. What are the climate change impacts that you're feeling in your business at the moment? And I'm thinking about raw materials, for example. What's actually hitting you at the moment?
Well, of course, in there, I would say that the overall, if I say that I'm in the right side of the history, and I've been working 28 years in a circular bioeconomy myself, and it still keeps me ticking, because I think that looking at the world now, how much we are driven still by the fossil fuels and fossil materials. So I think that we have a good fight that we are ready to take. At the same time, we have to be realistic on this transition as well. We have to be mindful on the biodiversity in our forests, etc., and seeing that we are building the resilience on the forests as well, that they are coping with this climate change, because the climate change is inevitable. So we cannot stop it anymore. We see that
and accelerating.
Accelerating.
But are you already seeing impacts that are starting to hit little margins for you because you're not necessarily getting what you want? Or in fact, actually, have you got some net positives at the moment because of where your supply chain is located?
Well, in relative terms, we are gaining. I think that we are on the net positive side in that sense. If we are kind of comparing the other regions, we're looking at the situation like North America, Canada, with their forests not being resilient towards the climate change, and still our forests in the Nordics are pretty resilient. At the same time, we have to be mindful, and we have been actually launching already years ago this kind of a regenerative forest initiatives in order to build this resilience for the longer term. Yeah. So that is something that we have to absolutely have to do in the future in order to be ready to cope with the changes that would be net negative and very severe at the same time if we are not doing something.
That's interesting. I mean, Finland's always one of those places that kind of news channels love to come to Finland to see how it's done, I suppose, to learn from you. Are you all as happy as they say, by the way? Are you all? So,
seventh time in consecutive.
No, it's amazing. How do you manage it?
In the world, so we must be happy.
Yeah, clearly. Or you think you're happy, perhaps. Yeah. Let's go over this side of the room. What kind of climate change impacts are you facing in your business? What impacts are there in terms of your supply chain? Are you having issues sourcing raw materials, for example, things like that?
Well, yes, we are experiencing, for example, at the micro level, more severe and extreme events. For example, you mentioned last year we have a severe drought in the area of Catalonia in Spain. We had rainfall, heavy rainfall this year, and 1 year ago also in the region of Valencia. We have a factory there. We had to stop the production and because people couldn't reach the factory. So all this is pretty new. So
how do you adapt then? Are you having kind of crisis meetings on this, or are you? What are you doing? How are you?
We are starting to learn. No, for example, the case we are a continuous process. So as you are, and so stopping the factory is economically heavy. So we are now. We were managing that on a daily basis. So we are starting to create plans in the long term to face these problems. No? But this is something new completely. And in summer we have the temperatures in Spain are very, very high. So.
And they're affecting your factories, or they're affecting the raw material?
No, in this case, they are affecting the situation in the factories. We have to accommodate for the employees to be able to work there in this situation. No?
What do you do?
But in raw materials, so what I would say is that we have to play the game that it's being played in the world as a Europeans. No, I think that the European Union should be more, should lead more in terms of technology leadership, in terms of energy policy. So we shouldn't avoid that. For example, the price that I was mentioning earlier, today we are paying the gas at 55 euros per megawatt hour. The Americans in the US, they pay 10. Right. So it's 50 times. It's 5 times, sorry. So if we want to compete as industry, which is a sector that gives to the economy a very high value, is a high value activity and not to become a touristic place. So we have to play this game, and the European Union is key. We cannot do it as countries itself, no, because the other players are much bigger. No?
You have belief and trust in Brussels, then, so they can help
you. I do. I always did. As a Spaniard, of course. I was born in 1969, and I saw the difference. So in 1986. So I'm a big believer. Yeah.
Very good. Natalie, let me come over to you. Climate change impacts that you're seeing.
Yes,
in your business.
Of course we see impact because we are in agriculture business, and of course this affects truly either the yield, the efficiency of the crops, or also the life of the cows and so on. So. But this is part of the strategic plan. So we look ahead of I would say, the climate impact. We know the regions. We know if we have to shift some source of feed, for instance, and so on. And we also encourage our partners to adapt to climate change ahead. So, for instance, adopting regenerative agriculture practices. We know that makes them more resilient. So we built a milk academy where we share practices, with our partners on an open source mode, I would say. And we go along with them, on this journey to adapt in those cases.
Tell me about the horizons you're looking at. I mean, are you looking 10 years ahead on this? Or are you looking 25 years ahead?
Well, first of all, we are compliant with CSRD, so we have to look pretty much ahead. But it's true that I would say the strategies we adapt already now based on that, even if the things is not happening exactly tomorrow.
But you've seen the heat wave in America this week, and there are many organisms of all kinds that can't really survive or adapt to that as quickly as we would like them to. And those are the basis of lots of supply chains. You must be concerned about that kind of thing happening in Europe too.
Yes, absolutely, yes. But we were looking at it ahead, I would say. So maybe we were, so it doesn't mean that we do not have our crisis management, especially we have also a plant in Catalonia, exactly. So there it goes sometimes with some crisis management, of course. But structurally,
if all the cows in Catalonia suddenly get hit by a 50-degree heat wave, they're not going to be producing. Possibly they're going to be dying. What do you do?
Yes, you need to adapt the way to I would say to manage those things, to manage the barns for instance for the cows. to manage the sourcing for the feed and so on and so forth, you know. So it goes really with some true changes.
Right.
And
Yeah,
these
on the
of
ground,
course,
on the farm, really. to
yes,
make sure.
exactly,
Yeah.
on the farm.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to be, I would say, truly next to our partners to make them more sharing also the knowledge on how to manage that.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to run out of time relatively soon, but I wanted to ask about the whole process of kind of publishing detailed environmental data within an organization like yours. So let's go back along here. Maybe, Natalie, you can start. You can talk about that. But it's something that takes time. It's something that takes resources to publish that detailed environmental data. Is it really worth it?
It is. Oh, sorry.
If you want to go
jumped
ahead.
ahead.
No. I thought.
So what we think is that we were supporting absolutely transparency and disclosure. It's not by chance that we are here sitting for CDP and we were participating in that. So we are for transparency, but maybe sometimes we can simplify a bit. This is really our point, because you know some too much technicality, especially in the famous CSRD. We are sitting in France, so we were the first on the row to start with the CSRD exercise. Honestly, and my colleague and Mathilde Akash are here to testimony that it was really very administrative and painful.
Yeah.
So yes. So don't kill the transparency and the goodwill of disclosure with too much of the nitty detail, that would not really change the course of the action.
Yeah, that's a point well made, obviously.
So after all, I had to say it. Someone has to say it.
These are the people who have to fill out the forms, I'm guessing. Nancy, do you agree with this?
Yeah.
Because you said it's definitely worth it. Okay, imagine, give me the sales pitch. I've never done this before. I've run a fantastic business. Why should I do it? Why should I bother? Because they sound like they need a simple version or get an AI to do it.
No, I was going to say, so it's important. So we are very grateful to CDP because it gives you a discipline. No, it's like we are a company listed in the stock market. And so it's the same. So that pushes a lot and gives you this discipline. You have
kind of like a personal coach.
Exactly.
Like a personal
you have to publish. You have to open your books. So everybody can check your data. The only thing is that in the industry we are few competitors. And so, for example, I don't compete with Metzer Board. It has nothing to do with the paper they do and the paper we do. So we are very few of them. So the only restriction we have to publish the data is because the competitors, as we do, so they can deduct things that are our industrial property. No?
Right. Yeah.
That's the only concern we have when we publish this kind of data.
We've got a few seconds left, Fabrizio. Quickly, your thoughts on this, on disclosure and doing all of this paperwork, which obviously got a reaction from the room.
Yes, well, I'm surprised. That would be interesting to know about this. It makes me think about. I come from a different world. I come from the finance world, and there I was part of endless discussion on transparency in the global financial markets and the importance of that, and the resistance of companies in disclosing their tax data and things. Fearing that could disclose industrial business secrets and things like that. So I mean, it's a serious concern, but certainly something that can be tackled for sure. The way we see at the OECD sustainability-related disclosure is certainly we see it as a driver of competitiveness for firms that engage in that, conditional on the fact that sustainability-related disclosure is not treated as a compliance, but is treated as a decision-making infrastructure. So if the reporting, it becomes a decision-making infrastructure, that can drive profitability and competitiveness. This means a number of things, starting from, using disclosure strategically means a number of things, starting from linking sustainability disclosure to corporate governance structures and processes, linking sustainability disclosure to decision making and risk management, investing in sustainability data of high quality and of high quality and useful for decision making, decision useful data, which in turn can do two things. That is, can actually attract investors on the basis of this reliable, credible information, and can actually allow the management, the leadership of the company to check, to constantly, monitor whether there is an alignment between a transition strategy of the firms and, the key decisions like capital allocation decisions. Because what we see we do a monitoring of the sustainability related disclosures in our global sustainability corporate sustainability report, the last version of which was published last October. And what we see is that, these things cannot be taken for granted. You do see, companies, even important companies, that do declare certain transition strategies, and then, when you have together, because you need to have everything, together, sustainability related data, financial data, you see that there is no consistency between these things. So this is very important. But
I'm going to have to stop you because I've got a nice lady in my ear telling we need to wrap up very soon. One final word from you. Is it worth it?
Very much so, because we are providing our premium brand customers sustainable packaging solutions, and they are, of course, committed also to CDP, and I think it's a very good standard for reporting in that sense. But I couldn't be in the same page with this, that lowering the, let's say, some of these data point load would be feasible, I would say.
Message understood. Thank you very much to this panel here. Let's give them a round of applause. You'd like to take your seat over there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right. That was interesting.
Very fascinating. Thank you, Jeremy.
That was super cool. I enjoyed that discussion. It's nice to hear a bit of reaction from the crowd as well. Now, it is time to switch to another topic. We're going to talk about cities.
Yes, Jeremy. Alongside companies, cities are a pivotal piece in the puzzle when it comes to tackling climate change. Without them, action simply can't be effective.
So what does environmental leadership look like in practice for cities? Well, for the CDP Awards Europe event, we went straight to the source and we actually asked the mayors themselves.
And mayors really are a fascinating category of leader. They have to deliver results in their own term in office, but they're making infrastructure decisions that will shape our cities for 50 years or more.
Exactly. So how do you tread the fine line between satisfying those kind of short-term considerations and then the longer-term goals? How do you use data to attract investment and drive solutions that may outlast your mandate?
Well, that's what our next video is about. Let's take a look.
It's a great honor for Athens to be recognized by CDP and included on the CDP A list for our leadership in climate disclosure, adaptation and mitigation. This distinction reflects the collective effort of our city, our partners and our citizens.
Here in Scotland's largest city, we are proud of the progress we've made on our journey to net zero and of our contribution to the global conversations about climate and social justice. As the hosts of COP26, we help to ensure that the efforts of cities that are decarbonising and the voices of their people were recognised in those international discussions and negotiations.
We are one of the mission cities of the European Union, And we have a climate action plan that we really bring into action together with our industries and together with our public.
We are preparing to make public transport free for all residents by the end of 2026. It is a transformative measure in the name of accessibility and climate action. This will make Porto the first city in Portugal to achieve this. And data was a key factor in the decision-making process.
We are investing in cleaner and better public transport. We're implementing green and blue infrastructure whenever it's feasible. We are supporting our residents with dedicated programs to tackle smog and increase energy efficiency. We are stepping up efforts to increase and create new green spaces in the city, protect existing greenery and biodiversity, and also expand renewables from solar on public buildings to support clean energy solutions for residents.
Statistics shows us that many of our people want to walk, they want to cycle, and they want to take the bus. We simply need a city that makes that choice easy. This is why we are working together across governments and municipalities to reshape our future for the next decades. Our new bus rapid transit system and the vibrant homes and workplaces built along it will create a city that is more connected, more accessible, and more human-centered.
2015 pripravili vizijo Ljubljane 2025. Malo zatem smo zaprli tudi razpredel živ na slovenski cesti, kjer smo pripravili, da je to skupno vozišče tako uporabno za kolesarje, pešce kot za avtomobile. In moram priznati, da se je zgodil neverjeten preobrat. Tu se je ogljikov odtis zmanjšal za 6%, vendar tisto, kar me najbolj veseli, na sosednjih cestah se ni povečal. Torej, absolutno še naprej bomo širili pešcom.
Since taking office, one of the most important environmental actions we have advanced is strengthening Athens' climate governance through transparent and data-driven climate action plan. By systematically measuring our emissions, mapping heat risk across neighborhoods, and analyzing energy and mobility data, we were able to prioritize interventions where they matter most, from expanding urban greenery and cool corridors to accelerating energy efficiency and sustainable transport.
In the years ahead, Glasgow's citizens will benefit from the decisions and investments that we're making now, ensuring that we deliver a truly just transition for our people as well as for the planet.
Well, thank you very much to those city leaders for sending us those messages. I love hearing from city leaders. It's always absolutely fascinating because they're doing a real job down on the ground, making sure that those things happen. And with that same lens, I suppose, we're now going to dive into our second panel up here on stage, focusing on action, because data is only as powerful, really, as the decisions that it drives.
And that's why we're going to ask organizations how they can use environmental data to strengthen their business strategy, resilience, and growth, and how these dynamics are reshaping cost structures, risk exposure, investment flows, and supply chains.
Yep, so we're going to get into this panel discussion now, and we are going to be welcoming this up onto the stage our panelists. I'd like to welcome up Stéphane Cadieux, who is the chairman of the management board at Archaea Asset Management. If you'd like to jump up and sit over here. Esther Finidori, the chief sustainability officer at Schneider Electric.
Elena Breda, Senior Vice President for Product Strategy, Innovation and Sustainability at Electrolux Group. And Dr. Thomas Schulte, Senior Vice President and Head of Sustainability, Environment, Health and Safety at Bosch.
And moderating this panel is CDP's very own Ariane Coulombe, who is the Market Director for Europe. Take it away, Ariane. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Indeed, this is the panel where we're going to be talking about the how. So, we talk about the reporting and what that means and the effort. I think there was quite a reaction in the room as well when it came to the effort that it takes. And so what is this effort if it doesn't actually translate into real action? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what I'd like to start with is a little bit the bigger picture, and then move on to what are we and what are you specifically doing right now, and maybe also what it takes to do things slightly differently as well. Why not? To begin things, we've heard the word volatility come up very often today, but I think if we look at the past 25 years, things have been pretty volatile, all in all. And so it's something to maybe reflect a little bit from your side, is this elephant in the room, which is definitely not an elephant in this room, but maybe overall, is why is this not a moment to slow down when it comes to sustainability? And also maybe for you personally, I think one of the previous panelists mentioned that they've been working on these topics for 28 years, and it still keeps them, you know, very excited to do this and to work on these topics. You know, maybe what gives you your why behind this as well? Maybe Thomas, we can start with you.
Starts with my children. 4 children, and every morning I'm waking up is the question, what can I do for them? So that's maybe homework at home, but helping with homework. But I found out that in my job I can do better. Because Bosch is a large company, we have 90 billion turnover, we have 50 billion spent. We had in 2018 450 million tons of CO2 emissions, and we are now down to 310, despite growth. So that means, obviously, if you continue on your path, and if you use the opportunity to the left and the right, you can really shift big things. And so I think that keeps me moving every day, because be it human rights, be it climate change, you see so many opportunities and where you can improve the state of the planet, but at least also help people, and that keeps me motivated every day. And there's a great team which is supporting every day as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a mix of progress and also this kind of bigger meaning for what the work stands for, definitely. Elena, what about you?
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with what you said, and it's not only the right thing to do, and particularly in volatile times, but with volatility, risks are also becoming even bigger. And in order to foresee them and to have actions to address them, then is when you need to really work and you need to have data. And that is why also CDP, for example, is even more important, to have a very consistent set of data that is very accurate and comparable, that allows you to really be able to take decisions and to address risks, particularly in volatile times. So not only doing the sustainability overall and continuing on the path, because it is the right thing to do, and even in particularly in volatile times, but also having a set of data is particularly important now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the structure and also the amplification of risks, obviously, when things are unpredictable, makes total sense. Please, Esther.
I will answer your 2 questions at once. When I think about sustainability, I see it as a way of thinking that helps companies do 2 things. First one is optimization. You know, how do you make it better? Better product design, better industrial operations. The second one is forward-looking. How do you think about the future and take this anticipation into today's business? And it's all about resiliency. And optimization and resiliency are 2 different things. And in some cases, they can even mean or lead to opposite conclusion. And the balance you bring between optimization and resiliency into the decision-making of the company is what makes me very excited about my job.
Yeah. Stefan, please.
Yes, as an asset manager, of course, you mentioned volatility, and it's our day-to-day business. But we have to consider different leverage of controlling the markets. Of course, short-term is volatile, but long-term is what makes more value. And so that's why we have to continue to invest these fields, because we know that the risk attached to the transitions need to be funded, and that's why that's the role asset managers have to do in the coming years. So every day, of course, I think about my children, but I think that we have a specific role to play to fund the transitions in this world.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at the data points that maybe were requested or were needed for you to work, say, 5 years ago versus now, what has changed basically in this pretty short period of time?
What has changed is the number of data we can have today. Because if I just consider my company, Arc Asset Management, we launched our first ESG strategy in 2001. So it's a long time ago. But when I look the number of data that we have today compared to the ones we used to get 25 years ago, these has changed dramatically the way we can, analyze companies and so be more selective and really make a difference between the good players and the bad ones.
And this breadth, I guess is what I'm hearing, this breadth and depth of data, which allows for better analysis. Are there some data points that you would say actually are less used than they used to?
I won't say that. I think for us, the critical path is to be able to manage these data. This is the first point. And the second point, is to get, reliable data as well. So these are the two critical ways to be able to do our job on a day-to-day basis.
And Thomas, you mentioned also in your introduction that Bosch is a very big company, right? And when you consider maybe again also in this just 5-year span, which is quite short, but so much has also changed in the past just 5 years. Have you seen the feeling around environmental data collection change, not only in the sustainability function, because I know you also have moved a little bit around as well, but maybe you can tell us a bit how that has changed across the organization as a whole, not only for the sustainability people, quote unquote.
We started the decarbonization journey in scope 3 downstream with our upstream, with our suppliers. 35,000 suppliers, none of them capable of delivering data in 2020 or 2021. Now the question was, what are we going to do? Send a big survey with 480 questions, nobody's going to answer. No, so we teamed up with CDP. We thought about what can we do. And we started our journey, if I recall that, I think with 300 responses back 5 years ago. Today we have close to 5,000 and 80% of our turnover, we have company carbon footprints. We can steer the big lever. So that was a journey, and in between also CDP helped us. We now have better quality of data. But I can just say we started with just get any data. We didn't care so much about quality. It was just like, okay, get them going, explain them what they have to do, and we start plausibilization afterwards. And what we've seen is that this great effect, we scale the effect or the reach, and at the same time, year over year, the quality improves. We have now plausibility checks, and all of a sudden, you end up with something that helps you a lot. So as said, I think just get it going initially is probably a good starting point. And I would add to what you said before, maybe the focus of data is changing. 5 years ago, we thought company carbon footprint is most important. If you'd ask me today, I would say, well, maybe it's now shifting toward product carbon footprint. Well, fine, because the people we are asking for that data are now in a much more mature status than they used to be 5 years ago. So today we get data we probably would even have gotten at that stage.
You're going too fast because you're anticipating my questions already. But no, that makes sense. I mean, what you often hear, right, is that perfect is the enemy of the good in this case. And that, of course, it's about creating this balance between having high quality data, but also getting the ball rolling, right? Because we don't have that much time. And when we think about this high quality data and what that means for innovation, Elena, maybe a question for you from a kind of product research development perspective. Where does this accuracy piece influence your real-time decisions the most?
No, absolutely. Having this high-quality data is very key for us to integrate sustainability into day-to-day decisions. For example, when we decide which suppliers to use or which material to use, because all that then goes to our product, makes our innovation relevant or not relevant, sustainable or not sustainable. So having those data from not only from ourselves, but also from our supply chain and our suppliers, and we went through a very, very similar journey actually, makes it very, very relevant for a relevant innovation then for our consumers.
Yeah, definitely. And then if we take that as a starting point as well, again, this high quality data, when we think about it from a growth perspective, maybe Esther, do you have any examples where better quality sustainability data also led to better business performance or growth?
I think it's always when you look 5 years back, it's always of a nuanced type of analysis. I can reflect on CSRD because the conversation was opened by Nanon in the previous panel, and I'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? The good is, versus 5 years ago, a shift has happened. You talk about high quality data, but honestly, to me, it's not the quality of the data, it's the governance of the data. Where does it sit in the organization? What are the data rules that apply to this data, and how much is it embedded into the core IT systems of the group versus sitting in standalone, verticalized, sustainability managed systems? We all come from, I think, the later, standalone systems, and CSRD, at least to Schneider, has enabled us to do this tectonic shift where now the data sits within the data governance of the company. That's the good, because this is how then you can drive decision. It's not the accuracy of the data. It was already very accurate. It was just sitting in a place where it was not so usable. Now the bad. The bad is what Danon has already explained, the drain on resources. I would echo, it was not said clearly, but CSRD, CDP to some extent, is corporate level data. That's super important. What's driving value today and tomorrow is product level data. And the balance between how much we invest between corporate level data and product level data, to me today is just wrong, or at least the incentives we receive in terms of disclosure, market requests is not the right balance. And the ugly, you stated as the opening of this panel, so that's great, good data to drive good decision making. The ugly is when the frameworks, the standards, here I have in mind the Scope 2 greenhouse gas revision, for instance, the standards get it wrong, all the way to driving wrong decisions. And that happens. That's a real concern. When you frame very poorly your disclosure standard, if you're not careful, the way this defines the data can lead then to very poor or even adverse decision making. And that's the ugly piece if you get the data piece wrong.
Mm-hmm. I think on the governance piece is also very interesting, because that's something that also came out of a recent report that we published earlier this year, which is where you see the leaders in reducing emissions are also, there's a direct correlation with them being the ones that are integrating sustainability and sustainability data management in a way that's much more holistic within their operations, rather than having this operate in kind of more of a siloed way. So that definitely resonates as well. When you hear this, Stefan, do you have any feelings that come to mind, because you also come from a slightly different perspective as well?
And actually, as an asset manager, of course, our business is focused on taking investment decisions that are based on data. So, I mean, the data is like the fuel of our, that powers our activity. And I would say that this is true for financial data, as well as for what's so-called extra financial data. So if, and we do so, we believe that sustainable development issues are material, both in terms of externalities, that in terms of financial perspective, then we must treat extra financial data as financial data. This is exactly what we are doing at Archaea Management. But the number of data, like I said, has skyrocketed. And so the difficulties we have today is that in the ESG field, we do not have there's a lack of standardization and of harmonized frameworks. So that gives the complexity of what we have to do, and that's why actually we are very enthusiastic to participate in some with the CDP that deployed transparency initiatives that enable investors and providers to work together and to go beyond and to improve the way and the quality of the data we can have, and so that it will improve things in the industry.
Mm-hmm. And specifically, I think when it comes to climate, we've heard this also before, and also in conversations we've had throughout the day, the maturity level is relatively higher, right? When it comes to also where many suppliers are at, when it comes to their own climate data, but also just the overall picture is much clearer. When it comes to nature, and we've heard many times, right, we want to make sure that we're looking at the entire picture in a more holistic way if we want to have Earth positive action. And often what I hear is, yeah, okay, but who's asking for this kind of data? Who wants to know about water? Who cares? And also, it's a bit difficult to measure biodiversity, and there's no such thing as a 1.5 degree goal for biodiversity. So how can we actually? And so maybe my question is, what's your reaction to this when you hear, the economy, the players in the economy saying, okay, well, who's asking about water data specifically, for instance? And why?
Different answers, I would say. We belong to a group which is what we call a mission-led company. And in that way, we put what we call the natural capital into our objectives, aims of the company. And so, of course, we try to develop a range of products that are totally aligned with that strategy. So that's why we created recently with the CDP a fund which is based on water security and transparency, which aims to invest, to select corporates that have that monitor the risk related to water security. And so in that respect, we use the questionnaire from the CDP, and you have to know that out of the 22,000 companies which already answered the questionnaire, 10,000 corporates already fulfill all the data relating to water issues. So that's significant, and that enable companies like us to do our job, to invest in companies which are invest carefully and soundly to manage these risks related to waters.
Yeah. And when I mentioned that maybe climate data is a little bit more mature, to say the least, Thomas, you were nodding at this. This is something that you can attest to a little bit in your own work, but then at the same time maybe elaborate a little bit on how this data, maybe not only climate data, but also nature-related data, has also generated upsides for Bosch.
We are looking into materiality. What's material for our business? And without water, without nature, the business is not going to work. So I think we have an intrinsic motivation to look at that data. I can just say that since years. So even if nobody externally would be asking, we are looking into this water scarcity. I mean, keep it simple. If you today invest into a plant, and the plant cannot be operated every day because of water scarcity, or we heard that the people can't work because it's too hot or whatever, I mean, then obviously you need to understand which type of business can you actually support out of that location, because you need to satisfy your customers. So even, I mean, I'm just talking business, customer, sales, turnover, reliability. I've not talked about nature at all, but nature is underlying everywhere. So that's why I'm saying it would be too short-sighted to ignore that. And yes, I agree with you. I mean, look at how difficult it is for this mankind to just steer climate change, which is tons of CO2. It can't be more simple. Yeah, it's just one category, and we can't do it. But okay, look at biodiversity. Okay, that's even more complex. So what we now try to do is to say, which part of this biodiversity complex is understandable for our people, or at least for some functions, and then start it from there. So I wouldn't call it a submarine, but obviously starting smaller and scaling then might be a better approach rather than to explaining this big, very, very complex picture and asking people in this current environment now to buy into that.
Yeah. And then I see you nodding along.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the approach that we are actually having. You know, biodiversity till a few years ago, we were honestly not looking that much into that, but now we are, and we are doing it in steps. We are discovering, we are learning, and I think it's good also to be, led to have this type of analysis, and that also brings more and more knowledge and more discovery and more depth, so that we can really make sure that we address the impact that we have. So we are having a step-by-step approach in those elements. Yeah.
And are there any policies or actions that you've implemented at Electrolux that maybe at first, maybe people from different sides of the organization were like, well, okay, maybe that's not exactly what we want to do right now, or slow down, or maybe you've gotten some mixed reactions that have maybe over time you've seen that change, and also that there's been, financial benefits to those sustainability policies in the short and maybe medium term?
Yeah, I think, at Electrolux, I have to say we are lucky in the sense that there is quite a big buy-in on sustainability. It's there as one of our core values, and we are, as a company, all committed. It's really embedded in our strategy. So, having said that, of course, there is not always open doors, and yes, why don't we do that, right? There are some few discussions, but where we want to, where the discussion then goes is into the value that then it brings, the value that is, for us as a, because sustainability also drives consumer preference, and that we have more and more proofs, and consumers that want to have products that use less water, use less energy. It's also an economical thing for them, but still, it's part of sustainability, and the fact that our most sustainable products are also the most profitable. So that also gives us leverages to then continue the work, because not only is good for the planet, it's good for the people, but it's also good for the business, which is where we continuously push. So there is, in general, a very good buy-in, and when there are discussions, we always try to look into the value that it brings, and it's value financially, value as reputation, values as trust that this brings to us, and the resilience that we create with that.
Yeah, it doesn't get much clearer than that. Esther, what do you feel when you hear your fellow panelists on these topics?
I think we've just touched on a very important point, which is, more sustainable products or more profitable type of thinking. And I'll go back to what I was saying before on the importance and the value, the criticity of product level environmental data. If we want to improve the product design, the operations, it translates into concrete benefits, savings at the level of the product. If you want that to be valued, you need to pass along both, a strong marketing claim, a nice story, compelling story to your customers, and to back that up, the environment data that goes with it. And then you create value. If you don't do that, if you don't create that value, at some point, there are things you will not be able to afford. And by the way, this is why today we're experiencing limited offtake on sustainable aviation fuel, hydrogen. There is not enough demand because we can't pass along that information in the value chain of the environment value that has been embedded into the product design, manufacturing from one supplier to the next. If we create that value backed by the robust data, then you have the license to act. And then you create a self-fulfilling prophecy where better means better business, But this has to be created. And today, this vastly does not exist. That's the reality. That's why I was talking between the balance that we invest in corporate level data versus product level data. If I were an investor, I would be very worried to invest in companies who have that ability to create product level data. Well, it's not a CSRD data point, too bad. But this balance and the value intention we put into the way we create the products is in fact critical to the success of the business, and therefore as a positive loop to the success of the transition and the initiatives we take.
Yeah, but I agree with you. And for example, at Electros, we do a lot of life cycle assessments and so on that we have really at product level, at PNC level. However, to your point, we do not communicate that to the consumers. They wouldn't even understand it. And so how do we create that visibility also towards them? That is an opportunity, I think, on the way forward. Because
and here we touch on the question of marketing. Marketing now, greenwashing. Well, positive marketing has to happen. So collectively embracing that urgency to create positive marketing, I think, is also something we should talk about more.
And when you hear Esther's point on product level data and how there could be some maybe hesitancy to invest somewhere where there's not so much clarity when it comes to product level data, how does that land on your end?
Well, I would say that first that on this panel we have very good example of corporates with good practices. This is not always the case on the day-to-day.
This is not the right room for this.
As investors, I mean, we have a responsibility. We have responsibilities to our clients, of course, but also we are versus the companies we finance, and so we can encourage them to adopt best practices, and this is what we call engagement. As an asset manager, we made engagement a cornerstone of our firm, and we pursue it either through direct dialogue with the corporates or through initiatives like the one deployed by the CDP. So that's very interesting. And we observe that companies are receptive to this dialogue. It was not the case 10 years ago. And so things have really changed. And it's more easy for us now to send them questions and to have discussions. And even if they do not, I mean, accept all our wishes, of course, but we see that on a year after year, things are changing. And so, I mean, it's the mindset has really changed in the corporates. And I would say even because we are investing both in the listed markets, but also on the private markets. And it's even more important in the private market because usually we are working with SMEs. And in that field, we can identify that we have a lot of things to bring to the corporates in terms of environmental policy they can implement to improve themselves. So, yes, I think that's...
And Thomas, do you also see this greater ease in engaging, say, with your suppliers, a lot of which are SMEs, having seen kind of a change in the maybe openness to answer these questions over time, or?
Yes, I see that, and I think it's also related to the transformation in total. I mean, look at SMEs 10 years ago and look at them today. Most of them have to change technologies. They have to look into how to finance. They have to look into changing markets, heap of customer requirements coming in. To us, that means we have to talk. I mean, that's what you said before. You have to talk with the ones that where you want to invest. You need to understand their wishes. You need to understand their demands, and that's what we're doing in the same. So we have to be in, and that also means a certain sustainability and continuity. I mean, if I change my position every year, my suppliers will not be able to follow. So here again, I mean, looking at Shelley, we had great discussions over the years, and we were also struggling, saying, okay, how are we going to move forward? But it then takes those partnerships where you find the reliability and also the common understanding to move forward. And then probably once this big channel is kind of opened, then others are following, and that is what I see as well with disclosure of data.
Absolutely. So we have around 5 minutes left. We're starting to wrap up. You had mentioned, Esther, if you were looking now in hindsight, you would probably have prioritized maybe something slightly differently. I would have loved to ask everyone that question, but we're kind of running out of time. So I would rather say, in 5 or 10 years from now, kind of what would your future self say, okay, we should be prioritizing right now so that you don't have this deep regret to not be so dramatic. Maybe I can start over here with you, Stefan.
I think what we have to do now for us is just investing, because like I said, we have more and more data, and we will get more tomorrow. And so we have to invest in tools that can help us to gather all these data and make it the best in terms of analysis and identify companies which implement the best strategy in terms of environmental issues.
I would say two things. The first one is in the way you first don't underestimate the importance of how you design your data architecture to enable you to drive the right decisions, and anticipate the decision you will have to take in the investment you do in the data. I'll give you a simple example. If you want to drive energy efficiency, energy consumption per usage per month is enough. If you want tomorrow to anticipate that you will have electrified your load, you will have deployed your energy efficiency activities, and you want to start doing load shedding, meaning playing a good role in the balancing of the electricity grid, you need interval data, meaning very closely monitored data, and you need the measurement but the control. These are not the same systems. So anticipate what you will want to do to make sure you build the right data architecture to feed the decision making and the programs. The second thing I would say, it's a very positive message on the, I wouldn't call them the disclosure framework, the conversation frameworks like CDP when we think about the supply chain. To me, CDP is not about data comparability accuracy, which I understand very much why investors are focusing on. To me, it's setting the right conversation, because CDP is about the data, but it's more about the strategy. Tell me your commitments. Are your commitments ambitious enough? And drill down into what's material to drive progress. And such frameworks which are shared, they're very reassuring for suppliers, for instance, because they see that they're not in it alone, that they won't have to reinvent the wheel, and that has immense value. So collective shared frameworks, we can have a few for big companies, smaller companies, that's fine, but that's extremely reassuring and very, very, very valuable to drive action in the supply chain.
Elena.
Yeah, I had a very similar point, particularly to your first one, and it's building data already with what we want to do with that, because data is very good, but action is better. And when I look at backwards, maybe we took a lot of time to really build the data, and then okay, what do we do now with that? And we need to make sure that when we build the data, we spend all our efforts to have the right data in place for the actions that we need to take.
Absolutely.
In 10 years, I would like to celebrate that we have been flexible. We have seen sustainability hype. We have seen sustainability driven by regulations. We are now seeing sustainability maybe driven by resilience, motivation, and whatever. Until in 10 years, we will probably see 3, 4, 5 additional motivations. And if we stay flexible to adopt our principles and stay on track, I would be gladly to participate here in 35 years CDP.
On that note, no, I think absolutely this idea of creating the world that we want to see in a way, and also always maybe having the starting point from now on of what are we solving for, and having that idea in the back of our minds whilst obviously remaining flexible. A round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you, Ariane. Thank you to all of the panelists there. That was a fascinating discussion, really, really interesting. And now we're going to zoom out, actually. We're going to look at the big picture with one more keynote this evening before we move on to the celebration. And it's actually a talk I've been looking forward to for a long time.
So yes, the next speaker presented a thought-provoking argument in his book, Climate Capitalism. So what was his central thesis? Well, that capitalism, the same system that drove the world into an emissions crisis, could be the very tool to fix the situation we find ourselves in.
And as a climate change reporter for Euronews since 2019, I've seen the climate crisis on the front line in Europe. I've been to villages hit by flooding. I've seen the drought in Catalonia. I've stood on glaciers that are melting underneath our feet. I've been to towns and cities and seeing the solutions they're applying. I often think to myself that the pace of adaptation is not fast enough. And I feel that we could do an awful lot more. And I also see that global emissions continue to rise. So Estelle, I'm thinking, can we fix it?
Well, let's find out as we invite on stage Bloomberg journalist Akshat Ratti.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to the CDP for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. Let me start with a declaration. It's the end of business as usual. It's the end of status quo. It is the end of normal. Things haven't been normal since the US and Israel attacked Iran. Things haven't been normal since Russia attacked Ukraine. And things haven't been normal since the coronavirus ran roughshod through all 8 billion of us on the planet. But of course, this audience knows more than any other that things haven't been normal long before that. Because you all understand that a stable climate has underpinned human progress. And now we've gone past that stable window. But this is also the audience that knows how to work in an ever-changing landscape. Businesses have always had to adapt to changing consumer preferences, to new government regulations, to radical technologies like AI. So when CDP launched 25 years ago, a set of businesses showed the courage to do something new, important, radical even at the time, which is to disclose vital non-financial information voluntarily. Now, more than 20,000 businesses do that. And that information is enabling governments, media, and even other businesses that don't disclose to look at the progress that other companies are making on their commitments. That information has also shaped regulations on how sustainability is done around the world. It's vital information that is making the capitalist system work better. In my book, Climate Capitalism, which I hope many of you were able to grab a copy, I chronicle the success stories that allowed for scaling these climate solutions. How systemic changes can sometimes happen in radical shifts, but often they happen through a series of steps. And all of these success stories have a few things in common. They require forward-looking businesses to work with committed people and governments to make progress happen at scale, at a country level, at the global level. And these success stories have happened because many of you have run your businesses not on a business as usual trajectory. But that said, we have to be humble about the progress we have made so far. The reality is that we continue to hurtle towards a catastrophic life on this planet. Sure, since the Paris Agreement was signed, the worst-case scenario has ticked down from 4 degrees Celsius to a little less than 3 degrees Celsius. That's progress, but nowhere enough. So unlike governments and politicians today, businesses and investors often have a much longer time horizon. That means when governments don't do their bit, or in some cases cannot do their bit, it is no excuse to step back. We are in a world where risks and opportunities are growing across multiple fronts. We heard so many of those during the panel discussions. Trade, supply chains, inflation, geopolitics, AI, and of course, climate change. What is different about climate change is that it doesn't sit neatly in a category of its own. Instead, it multiplies the risks and opportunities across all those verticals. It's often said that in life and in business, there are no guarantees. Well, that's not quite right. In some cases, science can provide guarantees. We know the more we heat the planet, the more we will harm people, the biosphere, and, of course, as a result, capital. So businesses can only ignore such a guarantee at their own peril. Now, as we look at the next 25 years of CDP and the next 25 years of climate action, the case to act only gets stronger. Sure, we all agree that climate change is a collective challenge, and the most efficient way in which we solve this is if we all work together. But we also know that we live in the real world where things don't always work as we would like it to work. And so that means when governments aren't able to do what they must, businesses need to step up. And given the solutions we've developed so far, I'd like to make the case that there are now enough examples where businesses can act in their own interest as well as in the interest of the planet. We heard some of those examples in the conversations earlier. Let me give you some more from my current obsession, which is electrification. Electrification is a key climate solution. The vast majority of emissions that can be cut around the world can be cut in just 2 simple steps. Not all of the emissions, but the vast majority. Electrify as much of the end use of energy as possible, and decarbonize the use of that electricity. European countries and businesses, and many developing countries even today, have done a phenomenal job at decarbonizing power, but a pretty poor job at electrifying end use. And that means emissions aren't being cut at the pace they could, and that also means that businesses are leaving money on the table. Let me explain. Much like we all understand the science of how greenhouse gases heat the planet, I think we all now need to learn that using electricity fundamentally makes the energy system more efficient. And the economic case for electrification continues to get stronger, regardless of where the oil price is today. $100 a barrel, it could be 60 and it'll still be economic. Or the gas price, which is at 70 euros per megawatt hour right now, could be 30 and it's still economic. That's because, take the example of electric cars. A single unit of energy coming from electricity can take that car 3 times the distance of a fossil fuel car. Same thing with a heat pump. 1 unit of electricity gives you 3 units of heat, when a gas boiler or an oil boiler or oil furnace would only give you 1. And best of all, electrifying devices comes with the added advantage of digitalizing that use, which means you can very quickly add on things like AI that will make the processes even more efficient. And of course, businesses know this more than anybody else. Any energy you don't use is money you save. And of course, emissions you cut. Finally, electric devices are built on top of a set of technologies that are continuing to fall in price, unlike most fossil fuel technologies. They use batteries, electric motors, inverters, computer chips, and of course, AI. There is simply no other form of energy that can compete with electricity. And this isn't theory. I'm not trying to make an example out of telling you to learn new theory. This is happening around the world. And you just need to look at China and the speed at which it is electrifying its entire economy. It has now gone in total use of electricity as a share of its total energy beyond Europe and beyond the US. And that actually happened like 5 years ago. Any economy electrifying will see advantages. Some of the biggest deployment of solar today is happening in Saudi Arabia. Some of the fastest sales in electric cars is happening in the United Arab Emirates. But of course, the countries and regions that have small amounts of fossil fuels or no fossil fuels, like here in Europe, will see the biggest benefit. Let me give you just one example which we typically wouldn't think about. Ethiopia is one of the poorest countries in the world. 2 years ago, it banned the import of all fossil fuel cars. And the result today, 2 years on, where we went out and we did reporting earlier this year, is that there's been a huge boom in electric cars. Customers are satisfied, and of course, with where the oil price is today, the government is very happy. We heard from businesses earlier in the conversation that the oil and gas price volatility that we are seeing caused by the war in the Middle East is already affecting them. These are instantaneous changes that happen across businesses. Now, electrification allows for domestic generation, it allows for long-term stable pricing, and of course, it allows for energy without emissions. Security, affordability, and sustainability. The holy trinity, I would say, for the businesses here in the room. So if all of this makes sense, I'm going to say something that's going to be very controversial. I'm going to make the case that there should be one more data point added to the disclosures that companies are making. And that data point should be to measure just how much of your energy is coming from electricity. How much have you electrified your own businesses? Of course, not all businesses can be 100% electric, but the further you can go, the better your businesses would be ready for the future that we are living in. So let me end with where I started. Business as usual is over. You guys already knew that. But it also means that because you guys have been ahead of the curve, the opportunities for you to be creative, to be bold, to be radical, has only grown. And it's now for you to grasp it. Thank you.
Thanks again to Akshat Arati. What an afternoon. I think it's safe to say we've had some excellent discussions. We started with CDP's vision for the next 25 years. We heard about the economics of environmental leadership, about cities that are building legacies that will outlast any political cycle, and now a case for using the systems of today to drive a thriving Earth-positive future.
You're right, Estelle. Yeah, it has been inspiring, and certainly there have been a few moments when even a cynical old journalist like me has felt somewhat positive about the future. We know that data matters, we know that leadership matters, and the organizations that we're about to honor tonight, they matter enormously. But before we get started with the awards, it's time for us all to take a short break.